I figured like about half of what we're actually saying here is usable. So
Yeah, my half.
oh, there it is. There's our cold open. Hi, I'm John.
I'm Janty.
And this is Digital DM. So today we have a list of things that we think you should keep in mind as you either switch to virtual tabletop gaming or just to make your virtual tabletop gaming better than it currently is, perhaps. We're going to mention a couple different items here. We have 8 different tips for you or just things to think about as you go.
Little mini rants is what we've got.
Rant number 1, and I'm assuming insert graphic here. The first thing on this list is the idea that webcams are surprisingly effective. I know when I started playing virtually, we only did audio, and it was good, but it wasn't until we all agreed to use webcams that really made a big difference in our gaming.
I don't know if it's one of these things that like everyone says, but it isn't true. You know, the whole like we only use 5% of our brains or something. But isn't there something like 90% of communication is done non-verbally or something like that? I've completely pulled that number out of my butt, but there's definitely something there about like, you know what I mean? Like communicate, much communication is little facial things and, you know.
Yeah, well, sight is our most powerful sense, and so not being able to see the people you're playing with in a game where you have to go off each other can be really difficult. And so I think it's safe to say that I know a lot of us, when we had to do this transition to virtual, whether it's for work or play, we have devices that have built-in webcams. And if you don't, there are affordable webcam options. Not mandatory, of course, but...
And they're not as affordable as they were, right? Because they went way up in price at the beginning of the pandemic, because everyone needed one, like you say, for like work, Zoom calls and all that sort of stuff, you know?
That's true. Yeah, the biggest issue with our group was being comfortable, because we were playing with some people that we were kind of new with, or actually we were playing with a bunch of friends we only knew from being online. And so the first time you open yourself up to flipping that webcam on, it can be a little intense. But being able to see someone's reactions rather than hear them, like there are so many, like you said, non-verbal reactions, like just the face. And you see that, especially whether player or DM, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Like you said just before we started recording, that kind of that reaction moment sometimes as a DM can be really quite useful. You come out with something, or you know, XYZ happens. You look around the table, or you know, the table, and you see 3 people, you know, draw back in shock. You might not have got that from a webcam, and sometimes that reaction is really interesting to know what buttons to push, you know, where to sort of steer your players. So yeah, webcams are really good, and you will probably, if you don't use them a lot, you will feel awkward on them. But just think about the first time you played D&D and how awkward you felt doing a terrible Scottish accent on your dwarf, or you know, like the D&D is a game of first uncomfortable things. Just add webcams
it's
to the
putting
list.
yourself out there, and so this is another way to just put yourself out there. And maybe in the future we can discuss the different options for voice or for video, Discord and all those other options for people to use.
Well, very briefly, we use Discord usually, but we're doing this via Google Meets. So, you know, there are lots of different ways to do it.
Be ready. You might have even noticed it so far in this video. Be ready for awkward pauses.
This is a weird one.
It is.
Because it doesn't sound like it's going to be a thing, but it really is. Pauses and speaking over each other. There's just something really unnatural about having to talk like this, you know, through the internet. That you don't really notice it until you have to sit down and actually have to do it. But I never said, "Oh no, go on. Oh no, go on. No,
oh no, you. No, please. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, yeah, it's okay. No, you go. No, you go. Like that just doesn't happen that much at an actual table. You know, when you're actually sitting and playing D&D.
Actual humanity. Yeah, just talking to people. Yeah.
Do we even have any tips for how to not make it happen, or are we just telling people to just be aware that it's going
to? It's one of those. Well, tip number 1, having the webcam kind of helps. But also just as you get used to the group, I've found that in the groups we play with, as we've gotten used to playing with each other, we sort of figure out each other's rhythm. So it's one of those things you kind of got to stick to it. Sometimes I get the feeling from what I've seen, people out there that are making the transition to virtual from tabletop, maybe abandoning it too soon because of how awkward this feels. I'd encourage people to just kind of stick with it, and you eventually find a rhythm. It doesn't go away completely, but it gets better for sure. It gets better for sure.
And it may be worth pointing out that we play virtually because our group is spread across the states, well, across North America. I'm in Canada. So our group is never really going to play unless we all sort of get together one weekend and meet in the middle for like a one-off. We play virtually always, but a lot of people perhaps finding this channel are maybe sort of having to shift virtually for a while because of the pandemic or what have you. I personally think there are a lot of pros to playing virtually, which we'll get into a little bit later in this video. But so if you are new to this, bear in mind that it is a little awkward playing digitally and talking digitally, and it definitely does get better the more you do it.
Tip number 3, something that I actually just got into a couple months ago, having a second monitor. One thing I don't think we really want to do is tell you have to do all this. You have to go out and spend money. But if you can swing it, and if you've got an extra old TV in your house that you can hook up to your computer, and it really is helpful to have a second monitor or use your phone for character sheets on one screen, and the tabletop that you're using if you're using one on another. This
is pretty useful for a player character. It's incredibly useful for a DM. Like I have 3 monitors, and when I'm DMing, it still isn't enough. Like
I DM'd with 1 for quite a while,
it's crazy.
And all it really cuts down. Again, awkward pauses, flow is an issue with virtual tabletops. So being able to streamline as much of your process as you can. And that goes into prepping for games like pre-rolling initiative and stuff like that, which will probably be another video someday down the line. But being able to have all the windows that you need up and a single monitor just can't cut it. So if you can afford a second monitor, it is super useful. And even if you don't need a map, you can have your chat on one screen with your beautiful webcams and your character sheet. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You think about what you would normally have at a table. Like there's the table, there's the play space, the mat itself. That's arguably should be one monitor, especially during combat. Really, that's there's a monitor. You've got the webcams because you want to be able to look around and see all the people at the table. You've got your character sheet and your player handbook in front of you. If you're a DM, you've got everything that's going on behind your screen, right? You've got initiative rolls. You've got buffs and debuffs and all the monsters that you've got ready for the So I think multiple monitors are maybe a little bit more important when it comes to combat. You can play, and we have played, and I've played with other groups just with text chat even, like we just sit down in with a Discord chat or something. And I've even played a sort of weird, say it wasn't D&D, but I've played a role-playing session where like we weren't even all there together. You type in the chat something and you check
like
back
a turn-based.
later, and so almost like a turn-based thing. People could pop in and out. So again, you don't need any of this stuff, but if you're sitting down just for a regular D&D session, a second monitor, if you're looking for something to improve your sessions and you've got a bit of cash lying around, or like you say, a spare monitor or an iPad or something you can have around, having some of that information just away but accessible really can make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, it's just an ease of play. It's just, like I said, streamlining, so you're not, wait a minute, let me find the tab.
Although, that does lead into our next point pretty well.
You don't have to abandon all that physical stuff. And actually, this is where John T and I kind of disagree.
A little, yeah. I don't know if disagree is the right word. But yeah, I personally don't use that much physical stuff. I say this as I've got a pile of D&D books behind me and, dice on the table. But
That's my dice pouch.
I don't particularly use that much physical stuff when I'm playing. I quite like rolling digitally on D&D Beyond. If I'm looking up for quick need info on monsters, or the one I always have to look up is like stats, like
Sure.
What's the word? Like buffs, like whether somebody's paralyzed or prone.
Oh,
or,
yeah, conditions.
I always forget what those are and what they mean and stuff.
And to be, sorry, no, I keep this, my DM screen, when I'm DMing, I actually keep it laid out flat on the table because it has all those conditions in it. So this is something that I use all the time.
So there you go. So you have a physical solution for that. I will have them open in a tab. You know? and I find it much easier to, Google whatever I need 5e. That's much quicker for me mid-game than grabbing the book and flicking through the book. You know, like people will have little post-its in the book and stuff. For me personally, I actually genuinely prefer playing digitally to playing with tabletop. I like the fact that D&D Beyond, for instance, or whatever you use that rolls your dice, it'll roll your die, it'll add your
modifiers.
You'll add your modifiers. It will roll twice if you've got advantage. It'll show you the best roll. Like, I haven't got to sit there and roll and go, okay, so that's +3. Like, I don't do basic arithmetic. so you give me something that does it for it. Great.
Right. No, I get that. And like one of the things, like as DM, I used to make little index cards with all the creature stats on them. But what I've really gotten into now is just post-it notes in the book. And again, this is not virtual, obviously, but that's for me. If I know that, especially for random encounters, I don't know what you're going to maybe get into. I just have the book next to me, so I can quickly flip. But like you said, you can just Google search the creature with the stat block, and it can come right up. So.
And the other thing I was thinking about with this physical stuff, and it's not something we've prepped, we haven't got this written down, it's just come to me now. Like, we use digital maps and digital tabletops, or virtual tabletops they're usually called, and this channel will have a good chunk of its content devoted to making those maps and using those maps. But a lot of people who have had to convert to virtual due to things like the pandemic will actually set up a webcam pointing at a table, because they have all the physical props, they have all the miniatures, they have all the scenery and stuff, you know. So just because you're having to play virtually doesn't mean that all that sort of stuff is useless now. It can still work. You can still use all your books and your dice and your little dudes. Remember that it's not a completely separate game. It's the same game. This is just a way we have to do it.
And this can be a very expensive hobby, as we'll get into if you allow it to be. Keep an eye on your subscription services and your microtransactions. I would say for people who have established that you are now playing virtually, it's going fairly smooth. I would say those are the people that we would recommend starting to think about purchasing maybe some of the books digitally on D&D Beyond, or buying a subscription to a service that you might use. Again, especially for DMs, because DMs, now that's those upper tiers. You can go ahead and pay to have your campaign share your digital books.
Yeah. Which is useful. We use that.
Yes, you do. Again, like you just mentioned, you can have all the minis and all this and all of that. If you've got to keep track of what you have. We play with a free version of Roll20. We don't actually pay for Roll20, and it serves us good enough for now because we're not willing to sink the cost into it.
It's not even the fact that because you can pay a subscription for Roll20 and it gets rid of the ads and gives you a few more systems and stuff, but we only really use the virtual tabletop as the tabletop. Like we roll and have character sheets on D&D Beyond, so we pretty much use Roll20 just for, here's the map and you're moving the characters around. So I don't necessarily find that we need the subscription, but then also you want to, you need to as a DM, you need to throw down whatever monster, right? There's a good chance that the free version won't have that monster you need, but they'll sell it in a little pack of monsters that's $5 or whatever, or and you can often Google images, but a lot of them have watermarks and stuff, so you buy them that way. All these $2 or $3, they really start to add up. And as far as subscriptions go, like I've had to sort of lean back a little bit on my subscriptions for D&D because I was signing up to everything thinking, it's only a few dollars a month. They all start to add up a little, you know, when you've got your virtual tabletop of choice. You've got your this is more so for DMs, I think, than players really. But say you've got you know, a music software in place so that, you know, everyone can hear your music. You've got you know, all the books on D&D Beyond. You've got maybe a map making software that you subscribe to. You know, something like a campaign manager like World Anvil or something. I'm specifically not trying to name names here because they all do it. They're all pretty much all of these are on a subscription system, you know. So I don't want to call anyone out here because they're all good services for what they do.
You just named all the ones I use.
So. Yeah, well that's it. They you know they're pretty well priced, but they can start to add up if you don't sort of keep an eye on them. So
and I think especially for people who this is a temporary thing, who are itching to get back to. You know, of course, you can always cancel it, but I would just make sure that I feel fine doing it, knowing that I only play virtually. Both groups I meet with, we've started virtually, and like you said, it's because we're in all different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Scheduling is sometimes easier when playing virtually. It's the hardest thing. It's always disappointing when someone cancels a session, and especially last minute. That was what was the end of our existence for one of the campaigns I was in. We just, you wait all week to play. It's 2 hours before game day. Sorry, can't make it. It's killer. It hurts. It's never fun. It's even worse when there's a drive involved. When there's, and rescheduling can be significantly easier because you just got to be at your computer.
It's a bit cliche to say it, but scheduling is the number one boss in D&D. It is 100% the one thing that makes or breaks a group is having that weekly schedule that you stick to. It really is so important, and it's sometimes even missing a week can really throw off your game, right? So scheduling is really important, and like you say, arguably easier with digital because you gotta roll up. You gotta be dressed from the waist up, you know, like I am right now.
Sure, yeah. Oh, I did put a shirt on for that.
and you can sit and you know, all you gotta do is, like you say, get to the PC. You can have a beer. You haven't got to worry about driving anywhere or getting anywhere. So it gets rid of some of the hurdles. You know, stuff happens, work comes up, other commitments come up, birthdays, whatever. I wonder if the pandemic has helped people schedule better because there has been less other things that can happen.
Maybe. It depends, I think, where you're at, either in the world, depending on what sort of things your local government is telling you can or cannot do.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, yeah, the rules are different in everywhere, right?
Tiptoed around that one.
Yeah, a little bit. We're coming out of our lockdown soon, I think they said.
We were
yesterday.
Never in one, so hey.
No, it's kind of crazy, eh?
Right.
But yeah, and you know, and there's unfortunately there's always going to be issues. There's always going to be, like, I always wonder about this. There's always going to be jobs that people do that mean they never play D&D. You know, like anyone who's on a changing shift pattern work, you know. Like, you're going to really struggle to play D&D because it is the kind of thing that you need to sit down and do Thursdays, you know, every Sunday at 6 or whatever, you know.
So as easy as it is, I think maybe virtually that's even, you can just build it into your schedule. It just feels easier because, like I said, you don't have to go anywhere. It's like, okay, well, I know from this time to this time every every week, it's D&D on the computer. It's like almost as easy as scheduling like work. You know, it's awful as that is to say.
And let's be honest, you're going to be just sat there doom scrolling through Twitter anyway, right? Like, that's all you're going to be doing on your Thursday nights at the moment. Right. So why not play D&D?
So number 7, this is more of just not like a perk, but a thing to consider is distractions when playing virtually. It's a lot. I think you have a lot more opportunity to just kind of. What's going on over here on this screen? Or
I just did it at the start of it.
Or what's going on here on my phone? And that's one of the hardest things I think with the virtual is, especially everything's online, everybody's streaming everything. I got a new computer, didn't even have a disk drive in it because nobody uses physical anything anymore.
Wow, Granddad.
I need it for my job. We have antiquated technology in my job. I don't need it.
You need a floppy disk drive, right?
Yeah,
still,
right. My USB with 16 megabytes. But like, you're right. It's so easy to just zone out, especially if you're not the focus of the story at the moment. Or
sure, and most decent humans, I imagine, would feel incredibly rude about sitting around a table of people playing D&D and popping their phones out and scrolling through it. But that's under the camera. That's
you'd be surprised. I say I've never played in person. I've played a tiny bit in person.
Yeah.
And that's
people
what we
sit
had.
down on their phone. But you ain't going to stop them ever doing it, right? But
no.
I'd like to think that people who wouldn't do that still maybe just might look over and just have faith. Like we were saying about having a second monitor, almost that could be a negative because you can sit there and just have Facebook open or whatever, or your phone can be below. A friend of mine is a big quizzer, like does like trivia.
Sure.
Trivia nights and stuff, and he plays like in leagues and stuff, and obviously all of that has had to move digital, and when you're playing you have to sit there like this so that you can see that you're not trying to Google the answers or whatever, so and right. Part of me thinks that's how we play D&D, so that you have full undivided attention.
It is so hard to not just what's this Facebook or what's this YouTube or what's whatever. Yep, you're there to play the game, and you're there to run the game, you're there to play the game, and you're there to invest in the story and the campaign and these characters that you've spent all this time with and created. The least you can do is try your best to put the distractions away. Yeah. Harder to do virtually, but still just as important to do.
And with D&D, like you only get out of it what you put in, right? So if you give it your attention, you will get back a lot more out of it.
Right. Exactly. Invest in other people's arcs, not just your own.
That's a whole other video.
There you go. I like how we just keep saying that. That's just
write them all down.
We're giving ourselves ideas here. This is great. Most virtual tabletops aren't great. Like, be ready for it to be a slog to do things on your virtual tabletop mostly as a DM.
So for those of you who don't know, virtual tabletop, that's basically the software that creates what you would have down in front of you if you're playing in real life. So it's usually used for the maps, for combat. A lot of them do other features. A lot of them will take care of things like dice rolls and stuff like that. We don't really use them for that much. They're mostly just used to sort of show the play area during combat. They all suck. I'll say it. Like, there is not a good one. There are ones that are slightly better than the others. None of them that I've used, and I've used all of them, and we're going to be covering them all on this channel, and we will show you how to use them as best as we can on this channel. That doesn't mean we think they're any good.
We will find the ways to polish the turd, in other words.
That's the 100%.
We will make
polishing the turd since 2021.
It's a lot like the games we play. You find your ways to work around the things that suck.
Yeah. I think I have no basis for this at all, but I've said this to John before. I think the problem might be is that they're made by programmers. They're made by people who can make them. And they're usually labors of love, right? They're made part-time. They're made just because somebody wants to create it or feels like that they have a solution to the problem that is virtual tabletops. They usually do what they're meant to do. It's not that they don't work. They're bugged or anything. It's very difficult to make them do what they're meant to do. The user experience, the UX, or even the UI, they're clunky. They're often very bloated. And what were you saying before about because D&D is so big?
Yeah, the hard part is D&D is a game where the call to action is, what do you do? And you can do anything. So trying to create a piece of software that can account for being able to, quote, do anything is really, I can't imagine. I don't know anything about programming. So I'm assuming that has to be part of the reason why it feels bloated and heavy and you can do all these things, because there may come a time when you need to. But yeah, they're a struggle to wrap your head around. I've been using Roll20 now for over a year exclusively, and I'm just now starting to get my head wrapped around it from a DM point of view, how to actually build on it. As a player, I think it's a lot easier.
Well, yeah, you're moving a token around a map, pretty much. Is the only thing
and like the command features in the chat are straightforward, but as a DM, it can be difficult. So, but again, we can show you how to take maps that you've made yourself and put them in the program and make them work, and that'll be on a future video.
And because of that, we use a lot of different software. Like I said before, we have Discord, and that handles video, voice chat, and dice roll. Well, he was handling dice rolling. If we had a initiative roll or something, we would type into the chat what we rolled, right? But D&D Beyond that we use for our dice rolls has just added a group feature in, right, where you can actually see them all. So that's one thing that's been maybe taken away from Discord. But yeah, very much that we have to have like Discord, D&D Beyond, and Roll20, because they all do something good. You know, there's nothing out there, well, at least that I found, that does it all, right? There's no D&D program.
So number 9, we actually have another one.
Did we say 8 before?
We did.
Oh, okay. Nobody noticed.
Bonus was bonus.
Yeah, sure. Bonus
there you go.
One.
Bonus tip. So as we were recording this, one bonus tip for you. See, we say you're getting 8, but you get one more. One of my favorite things about playing virtually is using the text chat of your choice. We use Discord to send sneaky messages to other players or to your DM. My character that I play, been playing for over a year, session 2 or 3, I sent him a message. I told the group I was going to do one thing, and I went and I did another. And it kind of screwed the group over because that was my character, like right from the beginning. I'm that guy. I was rogue.
That's what my character would do.
That's exactly what my character. It was good. It didn't come back to bite me in the butt for like 3 months. It was fine. But being able, or like what I like to do as the DM is when someone says, I read this. Okay. I copy it from my notes, put it in a private chat and send it to them. And then they can read it to the group. And nobody sees those kind of interactions. And I think that kind of heightens the experience. I really like that.
Yeah, 100%. It can really help. And on our Sunday night, for instance, that you're DMing currently, a couple of the guys can read Thieves' Cant. So whenever they've checked, you've been able to send them a private message, so that the rest of us don't know. And yeah, that's really useful. I don't know what you would do at a table for that. Maybe text each other? Write down a little slip of paper or whatever?
I've heard of DMs calling people into the room, into another room to whisper information, but then it's clear something's up.
Right? Yeah, exactly. No These things, it's not only that you don't know the information that's being passed, you don't know there's information being passed sometimes, which it can add a whole new level to it. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. So that's actually one of my favorite, is that kind of, it heightens you can actually be sneaky if you need to be sneaky around other players. I think that's kind of fun.
There's your top tip, is don't play with John because he's going to be sneaky. That's right. Number 10.
I'm on. Bonus. Don't play with me because I'm a bastard.
Thank you for watching, folks. We really hope you've enjoyed this. This is very new. We've got a lot more stuff coming to the channel, loads of big plans. Not only these kind of discussion-y videos, we're going to be doing lots of hints and tips videos about specific softwares and systems to use for virtual tabletop, and also we're hoping to get an actual live play sorted as well in the future soon, and that's taking a little longer because there are many cogs that have to fit together to make a live play work on YouTube.
They're called PCs. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for us then for this video. So take care, everyone.
It's time for a long rest.
But sometimes scheduling can be easier with virtual tabletop. That was awful.
I'm just nodding. Smashing those segues.
Man.
Was that your impression of a Segway?
Yeah, it's a high-powered one.
Oh, right. the Jetsons ride?
Yeah. Get me off this crazy thing, Jane.